Hello and welcome to another new video. In this one, people, what we are going to do is to fit a Pro Layshaft into my nice gearbox. A very nice Pro. This is a Pro Layshaft. I haven't bought the Pro Clutch. All I've got is the Pro Layshaft. Reason being, already got the clutch part, so no need. And if you want to purchase this Pro Slipper Layshaft, you need part number U8973. That is U8973. That will get you a Pro Slipper Layshaft. And don't forget, you need the O-rings as well, because they don't actually come with the Layshaft. They are extras. And on this model, I'm fitting my aftermarket eBay purchases, bearing housings. Okay, bearing housings. If you want to purchase the Schumacher, not we'll say stock, the Schumacher alloy bearing housings, they are U8822. That's if you get them in stock. Part number again, U8822, bearing housings, alloy or aluminium or aluminum. Yeah, it's good, isn't it? I'm also going to fit the alloy eccentrics as well. I think these are quite good. Reason being, they're very nice to adjust. When it comes down to adjusting your belt tension, these alloy eccentrics are very, very good. So if you want the part number for those, they are U8974. Again, U8974 aluminium eccentrics. But at the moment, we are fitting the aftermarket bearing housing. I think these are about the same price, as the Schumacher ones, about 20 quid. I think 19.99 pence. But they are a very good upgrade. Technically an upgrade because the original ones are plastic. What this achieves, these alloy bearing housings, they dissipate the heat from your bearings. So when you're towering down the track at 90 miles an hour, you can rest assured that heat from your bearings is being dissipated because you've got alloy bearing housings. I know, that's good stuff, people, isn't it? It's very, very technical stuff. So alloy bearing housings are a positive. So don't leave home without those, people. Don't leave home without them. The other thing is, you've got to be careful that the back of the housing, or the front of the housing, sorry, doesn't catch your nice shiny slipper clutch. I'm on about the aftermarket ones, not the Schumacher ones. If the Schumacher ones caught your slipper clutch, that wouldn't be good. But I know for a fact that you've got to be careful with the aftermarket bearing housings, because I have seen it happen. I've not experienced it because I always check myself to see what the clearance is. I'm talking the Layshaft side where it connects to your slipper clutch. Just be careful that it doesn't touch, because there'll be something wrong if it does. But I'm on about the aftermarket ones, not the Schumacher ones. And make sure you've got the correct size screwdriver to screw these in, because how can I put it? If the hole isn't big enough in your alloy bearing housing, you might have to drill it. And if the hole isn't big enough and you try and screw it through, you end up trying to tap a screw through the alloy housing and the gearbox side. So just be careful. Double check that sort of thing. So we're on to the belt setup. Let's call it belt setup because these eccentrics are very important in the way you tension your belt. You want your belt not to be too tight and not to be too loose because you will hear the belt slip. So technically you've got your ball differential that needs to be tight because that could slip, so don't leave that loose. Obviously you got your belt tension that could slip, so it's not a difficult thing to set up, but I would say make sure your diff is tight enough, clearly. And there is I think it's in the manual, but it used to be in the original manual, and it's a well-known thing that you need to do. So it's not really a pro tip. The belt tension, you can make sure it's in tolerance, say, let's call it tolerance, if the belt moves approximately 1 to 2 millimeters when it's pressed down with some pressure with a bony finger or screwdriver. So at the moment, what I'm doing now, I'm flexing the gearbox housing because it is possible, you're not damaging it. This is a standard technique I've used over many years. I move the gearbox housing out the way, and then I get my eccentrics, and I don't follow the manual, as in there's no default setting for this. The only thing you want to achieve is tension in your belt with a tolerance of a movement of 1 to 2 millimeters. I mean, it doesn't sound much. You're talking, it's not an eighth, 16th to a 32. That's in old. Modern is 1 to 2 millimeters. So what you want to do is turn your eccentrics so both sides are facing in the same direction. You do not ever have them pointing in opposite directions because you are not doing it correctly. The only correct way to do this is to get your eccentric, twist it. You can feel the tension as soon as you start turning it. This is why I never secure mine till the very last point. Plus, if you do buy the alloy ones and you screw them down, the minute you screw them down, you will actually damage them, as in the face of the screw will bite into the aluminium eccentric. So to make sure your model or the eccentric stays in good condition, you only really want to do this once. So it's essential that you get it in the correct position the first time instead of rinse and repeating it and keep putting it in and taking it out. So this is why I shove a screwdriver in, so I can achieve a nice visual, because moving the gearbox out of the way gives you a nice visual of your belt, gives you a nice visual of your differential. So plus, don't worry about if your belt goes to one side. It will find its place when it starts running. Its natural position will be whatever it is. Don't just shove it. Don't worry that the belt is not in the middle of the differential. It's not an issue. As long as you've got your O-rings in your Layshaft, it will stay where it needs to be. And the other thing is, when you screw these in, make sure your screwdriver is a nice fit. Because these screws, when you screw them in your nice new gearbox housing, they will be tight. You are cutting a new thread. I mean, you could technically swap these out for titanium hex or stainless steel hex. I would go, if you do that, make sure you use an M2. M2 fits lovely. No, I've done this before with M2 hex screws, and you do not need to do any sort of modification at all. No drilling or anything. You just smash them in. That goes for the actually no, the gearbox housing, they're M3, but you do need to drill those. But you might be able to use 2.5, M2.5, but it depends. It depends really. But anyway, let's not digress from the main job, and that is fitting the eccentrics. So rule of thumb, make sure your diff is tight enough. That's 1. Make sure your belt is tight enough. That's 2. In the original Schumis, when you didn't have a slipper clutch, you could hear the belt slip if it wasn't tight, and you could hear the differential slip. Very distinctive sounds, both different, very distinctive. So I remember setting the diff up on the fly by shoving a screwdriver down between the universal joint assembly just to get to the differential screw, because some tracks like dirt and dust, and you just wanted to introduce a tiny bit of slip. That was before the introduction of slipper clutches. But now you've got a slipper clutch, it makes it even easier to set your stuff up. Diff, tight, belt tension. I'm not going to say tight, I'm going to say correct, because if you over tighten it, you risk bending your Layshaft, especially in the Classic. I think people were mentioning that on the Classic, that they were bending Layshafts. That is because the belt tension is too tight. These Pro ones, they are quite chunky, so I'll be very surprised if you do bend them, but it's not healthy for the gearbox if your belt is too tight. So stick to the rules. Make sure your belt, when you're pressing it down, moves maximum 2, minimum 1 millimeter. So that technically is all you need to do. And you can hear the actual 2 distinctive sounds when your diff is slipping and your belt is slipping. It's the job of the slipper clutch to do the slipping. You don't want anything else slipping. Okay, so it's quite simple. Blimey, we are blessed these days. We have slipper clutches. You should have been racing when there was no such thing as a slipper clutch. Then you'd be adjusting your differential like a manic. You'd be constantly trying to perfect how much slip you wanted to give it, but technically you weren't supposed to, but you did anyway. You always gave it a bit of a tweak. Yeah, I remember fitting my first slipper clutch thinking how good it was. I remember buying it and the guy in the shop says, well, you don't need both. I went, okay. How wrong he was. So now let's recap. On this gearbox, we've got the alloy bearing housing. That is a positive that will transfer the heat away from your bearings. So I would say that is very, very useful. You have alloy eccentrics, very, very useful, very good upgrade. It makes the precision of your belt adjustment even better than it could be. So there are 2 upgrades I would advise. They are very good upgrades. Don't leave home without those. And the other upgrade is the Pro slipper. You can't use the 3-pad slipper. You can only use the 2-pad slipper. I have tried. I did not buy the Pro kit for my slipper. I just bought the Layshaft, because if you've got the Classic and you've got a slipper clutch on that, that is the one that fits. So, plus the other stuff is on the Schumi site. If you look at it and you look at the slipper clutches for all the different cars, you can buy the bits separately if you know what you're looking at. This is what I did for my other cars. I just bought a Layshaft, and I bought the bits to make up my own slipper clutch, which technically it can. It's the same stuff. It's just listed on different models, that's all. Schumi always use the same stuff on different models. Rule of thumb is you can't fit the 3-pad slipper. That is the only thing you can't fit. So anyway, people, I think that's about it. Bolt tension, Layshaft, eccentrics. This is what I mean about the belt. The belt will find its own home in the center. Sometimes it goes in the center, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, I'm trying to force it into the center, but my experience tells me that just leave it and it will find its own place. As long as you've got your rubbers on your O-rings, your rubber O-rings on your Layshaft. Don't forget those, people. Very important. And that's it then, folks. Thanks for watching, and laters.